I'm a more explosive version of the all-time leading rusher.
Very casual. I'm think of the most productive running back of all time, and then better.
Yeah.
That's what I am. No, I do love the confidence from Ashton Jeanty, and he's a phenomenal football player.
All right, it is time. Despite Clarence's wishes, Clarence has been fighting me. Tooth and nail.
Lies.
You've been fighting.
We're
You're
at
like,
the
we're at the
Super
Super
Bowl.
Bowl. We got to talk the game.
I talked
the
to
draft
Micah.
Is 3 months.
I talked to Emmett. Emmett's going to be here. Draft.
Clarence, breaking news. Every season is draft season, okay?
That's right.
Let's go.
I'd like to welcome in our special guest. This is Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus.
Hello.
And I am a regular listener. I don't have good internet, but I know if I open Spotify, it's on my Spotify, so I will not screw up the name of the NFL Stock Exchange, the NFL Draft Podcast.
There we go. I appreciate the commitment to get the brand right. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I listen. I actually listen.
Thank you.
Like, there's a lot of people that do draft content now, and I think that's great, but there's also so much of it that you have to really pick and choose on what are you going to take in. And as somebody who studies the players, I don't want to be skewed too much by other people's opinions.
Sure.
But I will just tell everybody out there, his podcast is great. I love the way that you present, your knowledge of the players, your energy.
Thanks, man.
And you're a handsome man.
Thank
And
you.
I think that's important.
Wow.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Trevor's a handsome. Look at him.
I appreciate. I got a hat on today, so I'm not like flexing the full hair, but I could.
And it's a melon hat, which means it floats.
That's right.
Dude, these hats are sick.
Yeah.
I like free plug. I don't know if I'm like.
I'll give him a free plug, too.
I was gonna say, I
They
don't know if I'm
sponsored
like.
my YouTube channel once upon a time, so I
Let's
have the
go.
white one there.
Oh.
I bought this one in Hawaii last week.
That's
sweet.
sick. Okay,
Yeah.
one Hawaii
I was at a
trip
brewery.
flex, and,
Yeah, it
and
was a
also melon hat. That's awesome.
All right, you guys want to ask Trevor if we're supposed to take Ashton Jeanty or what?
Or should we play the audio from Ashton
Yeah,
Jeanty
we're going to
first?
play
Oh, you're gonna play
Ashton
it?
Jeanty out of your first.
Okay, go ahead and rip it. Go ahead and rip it.
Okay.
If you had to describe your game, how would you describe it? Who do you say is it similar to?
Well, everybody as of lately has been saying, I'm a more explosive Emmitt Smith.
Right.
So I'm going to go with that.
Trevor doesn't look like he might not
reaction.
agree. I'm a more explosive version of the all-time leading rusher.
Very casual. I'm think of the most productive running back of all time, and then better.
Yeah.
That's what I am. No, I do love the confidence from Ashton Jeanty, and he's a phenomenal football player. Honestly, I was doing one of those NFL Stock Exchange episodes the other day with Connor Rogers, and we were reviewing Daniel Jeremiah's recent mock draft from NFL.com. We love DJ. DJ's one of the best, and so I love reading his work. He's very plugged in, and so he had Ashton Jeanty going to 12 to the Dallas Cowboys, and Connor was talking about how he works for NBC, and they had Ashton Jeanty on the set, and they got to interview him, and Connor was just like, dude, every team that sits down with Ashton Jeanty is going to love him. Yeah. Like every single team. So not only are you going to love the production, you're going to love the athletic ability, you're going to love all that, you're also going to want to invest heavily into the person. And I know that, the topic of conversation here is like, for the Cowboys specifically at 12, do you take a running back in the first round, right? Do you take one at number 12? Honestly, he might not be there. You might not even have the opportunity to have this conversation. Like, he could legitimately be a top 8 type of a player.
Maybe they'll trade up for him, and I'll just quit.
Well,
trade up for him.
That's another conversation, but I know they need a running back, and they would fill it if they went up and got Josh Jeanty. All right. Look, I think that there is a great conversation to be had about drafting a running back, how early you use those assets. And I think that the Saquon Barkley conversation is a really good way to encapsulate that, because I know a lot of Giants fans are looking at Saquon Barkley's in the Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he's like, what are we doing? We gave away Saquon. What? If Saquon signed this exact deal with the New York Giants, he wouldn't have been doing this.
5-12.
He would, right? They would have been 5-12. He's probably worth what? A couple extra wins for this team. Now, long term, maybe if you accelerate the rebuild, like a year from now, 2 years from now, is probably what you're hoping. You're hoping to still get the best of him within this contract, to where he's actually complementing the team. The way that we're seeing the Eagles be able to do with them, but there's no guarantee there. And so for Dallas, the question doesn't become like, okay, well, is the running back position valuable? Is Ashton Jeanty valuable? I think that both of those answers are yes. It's just more valuable for different teams of where they are. So if you think your offense is almost complete, if you think you are a running back away from making this run to the Super Bowl, yeah, you could take him at 12. I wouldn't have any problem with it. But when you look at Dallas, you go, probably need another wide receiver. Probably got to fix the offensive line in a couple of spots. So are they in that position to really want to draft a guy at 12?
I saw Clarence get mad at some point.
Yeah, I was mad. I was mad. I just think that
going back to the Giants conversation, because I have the same thing about the Henry conversation. Well, Henry would not have done that in Dallas.
Right.
That's not the point to me. The point is get the best players on your team. He would have helped Dallas. Your question from a Cowboy standpoint is not what he's doing with the Ravens, is what can he do for me? Cowboys would have been better with Henry on the team. The Cowboys
unequivocally. You're correct.
The Giants would be better with Barkley on the team.
You're
no,
correct.
he would not be having those. But it's about what's right for me.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my focus. And so when you talk about the running back position and best player available, if some people have him, he hasn't been the top 3 talent in the draft period. But top 3
I had to
talent.
adjust my stack because people were like, well, then why aren't you picking him in the mock draft if you have him as the 3rd best player?
Right,
I was
if
like,
he's
that's
the
a great
third-
point. Let me adjust for positional value and restack him.
Okay, now you changed
Now
it.
you have him at 80. 'cause we're keep running back.
I'm just saying.
I have him at like 7 or 8, I think.
If he's a top 8 pick player in the draft, how do you pass on the best player in the draft when it's your turn to pick?
They probably won't.
I don't hate Ashton Jeanty at 12. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not somebody where it's like, even in Dallas' situation where I go, okay, they still need a receiver, they still need to fix some things along the offensive line. I don't hate the idea of them
You also
taking
don't
him
love
at
it, do
number
you?
12.
That's
Well,
where I am. Like, they'll pick him, and I will go, I don't love that, but now that he's on the team, this kicks ass.
you just have other things to do,
Right.
right? Like, that's it. It's not the, okay, we drafted Ashton Jeanty. Offense is good. We're
No.
good to go. If you tell me that we draft Ashton Jeanty and then within the next 2 years you're fixing the offensive line's getting better, and you're adding some other offensive weapons to go along with CD, and you're telling me that obviously Dak is going to be the version of Dak that we have seen from him before, guess what? That's worth it then.
Yeah.
Because then you're probably a top 8, top 7, top 5 offense in the NFL with that kind of thing. So it's just one of those things where you go, the value in the running back, it's more multifaceted than even getting that guy on the roster. So I don't disagree with what you said. The Cowboys are better with Derrick Henry. There's no question about it. It just becomes, are they then going to do what they have to do to actually maximize the contract that they would be giving him within the window of how long he is on the team? Because if they're not, then you're just saying it's a waste of money paying him. But you can
But
make,
he didn't get a lot of money. That's one thing. It's not like he got paid.
well, but how much longer is he going to be this version of Derrick Henry is kind of my question.
Well,
But in theory, we were going for
line
it.
up with Dallas' winning window.
After 12-5, 12-5, 12-5, I want him to be the best Derrick Henry this year for Mike McCarthy in his last year of his contract.
Yeah.
That was my focus.
I could, a year ago, I could have understood. You're coming off 3 straight 12-5 seasons. So a year ago, I think that they should have signed Derrick Henry. Now, kind of like knowing what we know about how the season played out,
but
you could play hindsight. But no, I'm with you. Derrick Henry should be on the Dallas Cowboys right now.
Yeah.
There's that part's because again, going back to setting up the winning window, being realistic with where you are about a team building aspect and when your window is open. You should have probably thought the Cowboys window was still wide open last year when free agency was coming around. So if that was the case, then you were in a situation where you go, okay, we're letting Tony Pollard walk, we're replacing him with a guy like Derrick Henry, and here we go, we're good to go. You can't really use the hindsight too much here, but now moving forward, I think it's a little bit of a different conversation.
Well, the dirty little secret is they think this window's still open. Because they're paying Dak at the top of the market.
Well,
they're paying CD at the top of the market.
Sure.
If you sign 5 functional free agents, you are. If you have the best pass rusher in football, one of the best receivers in football, Dak plays the way that we hope that he gets back to playing. Like, just that by itself, you can't suck. So if you would actually use free agency, you'd have a chance.
Yeah.
But will they?
Right. And just what you've done, because you've with Shotty, the reason why you kept Shotty is because you didn't want to blow it up. You think you're close.
Right.
You want to keep the continuity.
Right.
So they believe they're a few players away from competing.
So that very much makes me think that Ashton Jeanty is absolutely within the realm of possibility for them at 12 or even in your nightmare scenario, maybe a trade up.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Windows.
Sorry.
Glad you brought up Windows too, because Dak Prescott 4-year contract. CeeDee Lamb's got 4 years left on his contract. Brian Schottenheimer 4 years on his contract. And it makes me wonder though, do you have to prioritize getting CeeDee Lamb a running mate, right? And my question for you is 12 the only chance you can get someone who could step in day one and be that running mate?
It's not the deepest wide receiver class like we've seen over the last couple of years, but no, I don't think so. I mean, I think that there's going to be plenty of wide receivers that you'll get on day 2. It's just
That you would be confident in saying,
yeah,
he will clearly be our number 2.
It's not as confident as it was the year before, but in the second round where Dallas is picking, Jack Besh could be there, and Jack Besh from TCU, he would get a great running mate for CeeDee Lamb, Are they going to get your boy Emeka Egbuka? No. If they want him, they'll probably want to trade back from 12, get some extra picks, not get too far down the lineup and be able to pick somebody like that. I think a Matthew Golden from Texas, probably not making him to the top of the second round, but Alec Maynor might from Stanford. That's another player who I think I'm pretty high on when it comes to this wide receiver class. So there's a lot of guys that I think can be contributors for them. You don't have to force wide receiver at 12. And in fact, within this top 15, there's only 2 wide receivers that Egbuka's great. I love Egbuka. But there's only 2 wide receivers because I consider Travis Hunter more of a corner.
Yeah.
There's only 2 wide receivers that I think about at number 12 for Dallas, and it's Tetro McMillan and Luther Burden III. Now, they'd be great, obviously, but I do think that you can get an impact player, maybe even an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman that they need there at number 12, and you get a wide receiver a little bit later. I still think that's possible here.
So this is Trevor Sikkema. NFL Stock Exchange is the podcast. Pro Football Focus is where he's at. To me, this is a weird draft, and maybe it happens every year where there's something unique about it, and we say they're all weird. But this one's weird because I think that in the top 10, there's 2 guys that every year you'd be like, yes, that's a top 10 guy. And so it's kind of unique in that way. So when I look at the Cowboys at 12, are there position groups that you feel better about the caliber of player that's going to be there? Because I go through with their needs, and I think a lot of them gets weird on you.
Yeah.
They would love to find a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
If Mason Graham is gone, I don't see one that I'm like, oh, yeah, I could pick him here. But then the ones I really like probably gone by 44 too, so it gets wonky on me. Is there positions that you feel good about at that spot?
Yeah, because, I think about Walter Nolen. I feel like Walter Nolen would kind of be perfect for them, right?
12 seems early.
12's a little bit early, but it's only early because of mock drafts we see. If you think the guy's the guy, then 12's if we looked at the Cowboys big board, how they put it together, he might be 6.
Just to throw this out there, because this happens to me in the draft all the time. Walter Nolen, Ole Miss defensive tackle. He plays the 3 technique. The things that he can do, most people know the name Mason Graham at Michigan as the top defensive tackle.
Yeah.
I think there are things Walter Nolen can do at Ole Miss that Mason Graham cannot.
Yeah.
If one of them is going to have 13 sacks in a season, it's going to be Walter Nolen. The way that he can just forklift people, and Mason Graham is play in, play out, very good player.
Yeah.
Walter Nolen will do some holy crap stuff.
I'd still tell you that my boy Mason Graham could get 13 sacks out of
those
2.
Just the quickness and
but to your point, Nolen is more physically gifted than Mason Graham is. Walter Nolen's a former number 1 overall recruit. I think in the recruiting class 3 years ago, and it's because he's 6'3.5", 305 pounds. He's just the upper body strength is nuts. I was in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and we're not even talking about a one-on-one drill or a team drill. He's just going through bag drills, and you go, all right, that dude's different. Yeah. You're surrounded by future NFL players. That dude's different.
And then the one-on-one stuff is built for him. It's just how do I want to whoop you?
Absolutely. And he has all the talent in the world. So it's okay, we're sitting here. What we just explained, we go, yeah, but 12's a little early. 12's only early because of the mock drafts that we've seen so far. 12 could very well, in the grand scheme of things, not be early for Walter Nolen. So that is sort of where my mind goes with them getting a stud at number 12. But defensive tackle is also pretty deep in this class.
Right.
So if you're this is a little bit of a tricky thing. You want to play the game that is the NFL draft. You want to be smart enough to okay, if we're not going to be able to get a guard or a wide receiver that we love at 44, and we are going to be able to get a defensive tackle that we still feel good about, maybe not Walter Nolen, but maybe somebody else, maybe like a TJ Sanders.
Don't go too far down the board to do this, Trevor.
What do you mean?
If you're going to say that I'm going to play it by position, you better not be picking your 17th best player over your 9th best player because of that.
It gets difficult to do that. So it's all just part of the game that you have to play. But I also think they have a chance to get a really good interior offensive lineman if they want as well at number 12.
I want to put Kelvin Banks at guard and watch him do Zach Martin stuff.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine with me.
Can he play tackle, though?
Kelvin Banks?
Yeah.
I think so. I think he's got He's kind of an interesting build. I think people look at him and he's right around 6'3". I think that's what he's going to measure.
By the way, this is the University of Texas left tackle.
Yep, and he plays left tackle for them. Has the last couple of years. He's going to be one of the younger players in the class, which you love. Got really good athleticism to it. Really coordinated footwork. Great on the hoof as a puller. He can execute zone blocking plays. He's not the strongest offensive lineman, but I think that with him being so young, you get him a strength and conditioning program at the NFL level. He'll be able to get functionally stronger. He's a little bit smaller of a guy, like I mentioned, right around 6'3", but he has, I think, longer arms than a 6'3" frame. So that's actually what you want. I think a lot of people look at offensive line and they go, well, he's only 6'3". There's not a lot of 6'3" offensive tackles at the NFL level. And you're right.
We don't care about up.
But that's often because, and in fact, if you are built the other way, where
you can move better,
you have a lower pad level and you can move better, but your arm length is longer, that's actually exactly what we want here. Yeah. So I think that he is somebody that Dallas at 12, I think Miami at 13, sort of the same scenario where, like, yeah, he could play tackle for you, but you'll probably want him to play guard because he'll be so impactful for you at that spot.
Trevor, one quick question for you. Who's the guy later on in the draft boards and the big boards that you're like, man, I just love this dude?
I love Demetrius Knight, the linebacker from South Carolina. I don't know if this is like Cowboys specific or whatever, although I think that they'll probably have a linebacker need.
His tape is really good, but also on tape, at least the first couple games I watched, I'm like, is he not in shape? Like, he's built different. He's just a really big guy.
I think he's huge.
Yeah.
I think we're just not used to linebackers being that big anymore.
Yeah.
You have a lot of linebackers, like Carson Schweschinger from the linebacker from UCLA. Dude, he's like 225.
Yeah.
And we're talking about him maybe being like LB1 in this class. Like, dude, 225. Who plays linebacker at 225? Nobody. Demetrius Knight is
about 250.
He's like 245.
Yeah.
So he's just a giant dude, and he can explode. And his tape is so much fun. He was, where was he first? I can't remember exactly where he was first.
Georgia Tech. I bet.
Georgia Tech. He was at Georgia Tech for 4 years, and then he went over. He didn't really play at Georgia Tech as an off-ball linebacker, and then he moves over to Charlotte. University of Charlotte, stud, and then he goes over to South Carolina, and he's a centerpiece of that defense there, and he graded out really well for us. His trigger downhill is so phenomenal. Like, he's not quite Edgerrin Cooper, because Edgerrin Cooper's more fluid and athletic, a little bit more twitchy.
But he hits people so hard.
But he is that, like, downhill defender like Edgerrin Cooper was when he was at Texas A&M. So that's somebody that just – I probably have a couple, but you asked me, and it's like that. I watched his tape, and I was like, dude, this guy's fun as hell. I love this player. Yeah.
I love it.
It's Trevor Sikkema. The podcast is the NFL Stock Exchange. And there are some, if you go back, they did one a while back where it's like fixing the Dallas Cowboys in an offseason. I love your player ranking ones where you guys do your dueling top whatever at position groups. Great podcast, Pro Football Focus, all of the things. You're a beast. Thank you.
Nice, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. That was awesome.
Handsome guy, too.
Thank you.
And a handsome man.
Thank you.
That's right.